conversation. And, you know, from a biker, runner, walker,
Sure,
businessman.
no, it's a universal product.
Yeah.
Who designed your system right now?
Me and Blake.
Okay. All right, so Bob, you didn't have electronic engineers helping you out there. So you did great, but I think it's probably, we often see this when, I mean, before I was in the toy business, you'd look inside a consumer product and you don't know what you're looking at. And we'd sit there and open it up and we'd have the smart people, and I could take $1 out of it, I could take $2, I could take $5 out of there. And you realize that you can shave tremendous amounts of money off there if you really can identify what you need to solve and what you don't need to solve. Right? You may have you know, a V8 engine in there, and you only need, you know, a little 2-cylinder. So though I think it's just, you got to know, you know, what parts are available. Also, you got to get to the rep who, you know, at a big company that knows all their parts, and so Derek has been looking around for the right.
Talk about?
Absolutely. Here's the thing, just what you've described, you write that out. I don't get too fancy. You know, I just give it bullet points.
Yeah.
I'll run it by the people. I'll run it by the people with a chip and say, look, here's our constraints. Can we do something? And if it's out of the range of what's doable, we'll let you know right away. If it's something doable, then we start looking at what we can do to cost reduce your product. So be more than happy to look at that real quick.
What about the possibility of doing a direct connection for the low frequencies through the bone?
Oh, like those bone speaker things?
Bone conduction.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about looking into something like that, and also, you know, right now I've got just a Bluetooth wireless clip on here, but making the whole unit of Bluetooth something that's integrated, almost like a
Right.
hearing aid that's in the back of the ear that sits right here,
Right.
with the speaker itself. So
I want one of those for when I'm working out. That's why I've been thinking about this lately, because in my workouts, it doesn't work the way I really want. I want more of the bass, but I don't want to turn the music up particularly that loud.
Mm.
But I want I want the visceral experience there. So when you get that, I want to buy one.
Make sure when he looks at it, look at a different thing besides the Bluetooth you're using, because you're spending way too much power and way too much money on that. You know, so you'll cut out $3 or $4 probably just changing how you're transmitting your data, you know, with Bluetooth.
Bluetooth presents a barrier to new product developers if you're going to have two-way communication. You've got the FCC approval, the CE approvals that turn out to be rather expensive to go through. Does the new 4.0, will it have the same issues, requirements for that type of testing?
The FCC?
approval?
So, well, the FCC stuff should be fairly straightforward, because if you did it right, it's the qualifications. And that's not my area of expertise, although I've done a few products in that space. But the way that it works for the 4.0 is that if there is a qualified design listing, if somebody has set it up and done it once, then you just have to be sure that you conform to it, do it the same way, and then you get a what's it called, an end product license, EPL, which doesn't have a cost. You have to sign up for it, but it doesn't have a cost. So if you're not doing something wildly new, and you can go off of a basic design, and the manufacturers are often putting these together, then you don't have to do the $10,000 qualifying thing. You just have to. And Steve Holland, who's here, is a lot more familiar with that stuff than I am.
What does Steve do?
He does development work.
Oh, okay.
And he did a lot of work in qualification stuff with Cypress and has done a lot in that space, and he's getting up to speed on the Bluetooth stuff. So, you might want to talk to somebody like that. The organization, though, too, is really trying to clean up their interface, the development community. So you can go to Bluetooth.org. Bluetooth.com is like the public, here's how what we're doing. But Bluetooth.org is the developer thing, and you can sign up for free. And there's a lot of things you can get access to and get on their
That'd be a good
their
question.
mailings and things like
That's
that.
probably in their FAQ there.
Right, and they're very supportive of developers, and they have a lot of training materials and things like that. And then their organization is based in Kirkland, so it's
It's close.
not too far.
Yeah, I have a current, it's a voice recognition application where I'm using proprietary 2.0 gig radio. Are you familiar with whether or not Bluetooth 4 is able to transmit voice back and forth across the channel or not?
So the Bluetooth 4, not the low energy that I was talking about, which is a low data rate thing, but the regular Bluetooth 4 has multiple profiles for transmitting audio. They have some really high-end ones and then some really low-end ones.
And what's the battery strain on that? Obviously they vary.
Yeah, I don't know because that's not what I'm doing right now. They're constantly working on trying to reduce it, but because it's continuous, you have to keep going. The reason that the new stuff...
Well, I turned the circuit on and off.
Okay.
Accelerometer.
But one of the nice things about the way the new one works is it's just sending little bytes of data most of the time. But it's it doesn't connect like, okay, I'm bonded now. On the new one, it just, everything's stateless. So it just comes up, does something, and goes back. And it can do it in 3 milliseconds now. It can do a complete interaction. So the radio's off almost all the time.
I got a question for you. What's your accelerometer solution? You know how much you're paying for that?
I'd have to look at the bomb. I run the company, I'm not supposed to know.
So bill of materials. So go ahead.
We rep Bosch,
Yeah.
and they're in a lot of cell phones.
Yeah.
They're starting to integrate their gyros and accelerometers and magnetometers all into the same chip, which is, it makes your camera look huge.
Yeah. These are solid state, so there's
And-
nothing spinning, right?
And they're starting to
electrons,
hit the 50-cent mark on these things. Remember,
Paying
they
a
used
lot
to be
more than that.
$7,
50 cents.
$2. We're at
50 cents.
I mean, the world changes when you drop the price. You can do things that were just impossible not long ago.
So now, when you look at your feature set, and you say, "Wow, we really like to do this. Oh, let's replace this part." Now you can get,
Well, we've been looking to go push to talk because of the accelerometer. So.
yeah. I mean,
Well,
accelerometers are
it's
the new
in-
switch, right? So.
It's interesting because the third device I was going to put on, and I decided that was way over
Yeah,
my
yeah.
limit, was a really interesting accelerometer because it allows you to get rid of all kinds of other stuff. And I just love the way they architect.
For those of you that don't know what accelerometer is, think of the Wii controller and how that changed everything. It knows where you're waving, just like your phone knows if you're waving around what direction. When you add a gyro in that, you know where your hand is in space and what way you're facing and all that stuff. So it's incredibly useful as a sensor, and you can pick up all kinds of information you never thought you could get before.
The problem with them, though, is that they generate all of this messy data. And if you're running into a cell phone or something, you've got the processing power to deal with it. But if you're doing these little embedded things, you can't. And this accelerometer, one of the nice things about it is that it figures out the answer in terms that you care about. Like, am I positioned this way or this way?
Right.
And it interrupts you when it has something for you to do, so you don't have to pull and something.
There's another word, embedded. You may have heard that a few times. Well, that means there's a little processor, a separate processor, not a computer, not some big mainframe. It's a little chip that goes in your little board, and that's an embedded processor. And so when people you do embedded processor, you write to those little chips. So there's all these different little manufacturers of these chips, and some people get better at some than others. So what's your favorite little embedded processor right now?
Well, I use the GPC3. It's got like 4.
What company?
It's General Plus.
General Plus.
Yeah.
You've heard of a PIC processor and the Arduino, and I don't know what the actual processor on the Arduino is. Is that a PIC processor?
It's an AVR.
So when you go shop for someone who's going to do your job, and you actually maybe already know the processors you want, you got to make sure you get the person who's familiar with that processor. They don't have to be, but it's nicer if they're already there. So that's why if you're going to go with someone like Derek, you might as well go in the area that he's got so much experience in if the price doesn't matter that much, because you're going to save